The aroma hit Lau Parker's senses like a memory jolted back to life. A scent that transported him to the days when he personally stood in the cramped kitchen of the very first Golden Bucket, testing and retesting fried chicken recipes until they were perfect. It was the smell that built a billion-dollar empire. But that morning, in the greasy haze of 4 a.m., something was off. He bit into a piece of chicken, its crispy coating just as expected, but his taste buds immediately recoiled. The grease gushed out, oddly, and the meat inside was half raw, half overcooked. That bizarre mix of burnt edges and cold, undercooked flesh felt like a slap in the face, a personal insult to what he had once called America's pride. He showed no reaction, wearing a plain baseball cap and a pair of old reading glasses. No one recognized the man in the corner booth as Lau Parker, the founder of Golden Bucket, a franchise with over 2,000 locations nationwide. With the anxious floor manager lingering nearby, he simply nodded and offered a strained smile. "Everything all right, sir?" the branch manager asked, voice scratchy with tension. "Just gathering content for my food blog," Lau replied casually, tapping notes into his phone. But what he was really writing read, Branch 37. Total quality control breakdown, third location this quarter with the same failure pattern. 2 tables over, a family of 4 walked away from half-eaten meals. The scene tugged hard at his heart. A mother quietly asked for a refund, while her 2 children, once beaming with excitement, now poked disappointedly at soggy fries with their plastic forks. The cashier processed the refund without even questioning it. Her face vacant, like someone who'd done this exact thing far too often in recent weeks. Those images didn't just disappoint him, they broke him. Like watching his life's work being quietly destroyed from the inside out. 2 days earlier, Lau had been standing in the high-rise conference room of Golden Bucket's headquarters, the flickering light from the projector casting uncertain shadows across his face. The sales chart for Branch 37, once the crown jewel of the Midwest, was now in freefall. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, staring at the line plunging downward like a heartbeat flatlining. Vince Harmon, the regional director, struck the screen with the confidence of a man used to being heard. "It's obvious. Weak management. They got lazy from years of success. We need to clean house. Fire the entire team. Send a message." Scattered applause followed. The other executives nodded with a practiced ease. The kind of consensus born less from conviction and more from convenience. Only Sophia Chin, VP of Operations and Lau's longest-serving executive, remained silent, her voice barely above a whisper. "This drop, it's too fast. Something doesn't add up." That night, in his quiet lakefront home, Lau couldn't sleep. Sophia's words rang in his ears like a warning bell. Around 2 a.m., he finally gave in, logging into the company's internal tracking system. The numbers danced in front of him like a string of red flags. Not just Branch 37, 5 other top-performing locations were showing the exact same pattern of decline. And all within the last 3 months. By sunrise, his decision was made. Lau reactivated a long-dormant company protocol, the anonymous quality control program, a relic from the early days when Golden Bucket was just a scrappy regional player fighting for shelf space. "Cancel my schedule this week. Tell them I'm taking personal time at the lake house," he told his assistant firmly. A few hours later, CEO Lau Parker vanished. In his place, Gavin Mills arrived in the quiet town of Lakeville. An unassuming food blogger with messy hair, thick glasses, and thrift store clothes. No one noticed. No one questioned. And so, a journey to reclaim the soul of a fried chicken empire began. Quietly, hid behind carefully trimmed stubble and a wrinkled button-up shirt, no one would have guessed that the quiet man in the back booth was the billionaire founder of Golden Bucket. For the first time in decades, Lau could observe the company he built without the performance that came with a CEO's visit. Branch 37, once a shining beacon in the Midwest, now looked like a house slowly caving in on itself. The equipment still worked, but the mechanical wheeze of age was undeniable. Employee uniforms were faded and soaked with sweat and time. Everyone moved with the tired rhythm of people doing their best in a losing battle. But what puzzled Lau most wasn't the broken fryer or the stained tiles. It was the branch manager himself, Tyler Stevens, the same man who had nervously hovered near his table on day one. Far from Harmon's harsh criticism of complacency, Stevens was in constant motion, fixing equipment, coaching younger staff, apologizing profusely to disappointed customers. His eyes weren't evasive, they were exhausted, carrying the weight of someone trying desperately to keep a ship afloat while it was already halfway underwater. On the second morning, while pretending to work on his laptop in a corner booth, Lau overheard a tense phone call coming from the manager's office. Stevens's voice rang out, filled with anxiety. "I'm telling you, this shipment is off too. The chicken doesn't cook like it used to. It's like it's been pumped with water. Customers can tell immediately. No, I'm not questioning the supply chain. I'm reporting a quality issue, just like the manual says." A long pause followed. Stevens sighed. "Yes, I understand. Customer satisfaction metrics will reflect on my performance. No, I don't need another regional inspection visit." When Stevens exited his office, his face bore the unmistakable look of defeat. He walked right past Loud without noticing him and headed straight to the back of the kitchen. That's when Loud noticed someone who stood out from the worn-down crew, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a name tag that read Marcus Cain. Unlike the fatigue and resignation that hung in the air around him, Marcus worked with laser focus. He inspected each piece of chicken with care, adjusted fryer temperatures and cook times with mechanical precision. When the clock struck 10 p.m. and the staff hurried out the door, Marcus stayed behind. He spoke softly with Stevens. Lau leaned in, straining to hear. "It's getting worse," Marcus said, his voice heavy. "This chicken is completely off. No texture, no natural sweetness. It's like we're cooking with an imitation." Stevens closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. "Henderson says I'm imagining things, that I'm just making excuses for poor sales. He's a corporate puppet." Marcus shot back, a rare flash of anger in his eyes. 3 more customer complaints today. Raw centers and burnt exteriors. That doesn't happen with quality ingredients. Just do what you can." Stevens muttered, sounding like a man on the verge of surrender. "I've got another online report meeting first thing in the morning." That night, Lau made a decision he hadn't made in years. He stayed behind to watch what would happen next. He parked his car in a dark corner of the lot, eyes fixed on the restaurant. Near 4 a.m., an old blue Toyota pulled in quietly. Marcus stepped out, looked around cautiously, and unlocked the restaurant with his personal key, disappearing into the shadows. Lau held his breath. Was this theft? Unauthorized use of company property? Or was something bigger going on? He used his master access code to quietly slip in through the back door, legs stiff as he crept down the hallway to the kitchen. Through the round window in the swinging door, he saw a scene that made his pulse stop. Marcus, now in plain clothes, was alone, working in silence. He powered up the fryers, laid out a digital scale, thermometer, and a leather-bound notebook. Every movement he made radiated purpose and discipline. He wasn't stealing. He wasn't sabotaging. He was cooking. At 4 a.m., while the town still slept, Marcus Cain returned to Golden Bucket with a mission and a heart that refused to surrender. Lau watched, transfixed. Marcus lifted a raw piece of chicken under the kitchen light, inspecting it like a jeweler appraising a raw diamond. His eyes locked in and his large hands moved with surprising grace, as if the food itself were speaking to him. "What the hell are you doing?" Lau whispered under his breath, pressing his back against the wall, heart pounding. In over 30 years of running the company, Leo had seen it all. Lawsuits, PR disasters, supply chain breakdowns, cutthroat competition. But nothing had baffled him like this, an employee voluntarily coming back in the dead of night, not for money, not for recognition, just to understand what was ruining the thing they once believed in. Lau crept behind a stack of supply boxes, giving himself a perfect view of the kitchen. Marcus moved like a scientist mid-experiment. His actions bore no trace of the frenzied hustle of daytime service. Instead, it was a dance, deliberate, rhythmic, and calculated. He pulled out a brown leather notebook. That notebook was not company-issued, but to Marcus Cain it was the only weapon he had in a quiet war against whatever was rotting the heart of the restaurant he once took pride in. Its pages overflowed with dense handwritten notes, like the field journal of a man obsessed with the truth. Still hidden beneath his disguise as Gavin Mills, Lau didn't blink. Marcus wasn't cooking a big batch, just 6 pieces, exactly enough for a single trial. He fried each piece for exactly 7 minutes and 30 seconds, not a second more, not a second less. Then, one by one, he checked each piece's internal temperature using a digital probe far more advanced than Golden Bucket's standard issue equipment. Each reading was logged, each piece photographed from multiple angles, as if they were evidence in a federal food safety investigation. And then, what left Lau speechless, he threw it all in the trash. Perfectly fried, golden brown chicken, discarded. "What the hell is going on?" Lau whispered, pulling out his phone to capture the moment. His first reaction was anger. Food waste was a direct violation of company policy. Unauthorized after-hours equipment use was grounds for immediate termination. But if Marcus was stealing or experimenting for personal gain, why the meticulous documentation? Why throw the results away? And more importantly, why risk everything for something he had nothing to gain from? For 3 consecutive nights, Lau returned. Each time he witnessed what felt like a secret ritual. On Tuesday, Marcus tested oil temperature, adjusting it by 0.5 degree at a time and documenting how it affected the color and crispness of the chicken's coating. Wednesday, he experimented with the flour to seasoning ratio to determine the ideal adherence. Thursday, he measured the resting time between drudging and frying. A minor detail, but one few ever considered. Not a single batch was kept. Each perfectly cooked plate of chicken was discarded. The silence of those nights weighed heavier than any tense boardroom meeting. Marcus worked like a solitary scientist, battling an invisible enemy, one that Lau was beginning to believe truly existed. What puzzled Lau even more was that during the day, Marcus said nothing. No comments to coworkers, no remarks to management. It was as if 2 different people lived inside the same body. One, a model employee, a father of 2 who always rushed home in time to read bedtime stories, and the other, a silent warrior, sacrificing sleep and family time in pursuit of an unknown truth. On the 4th night, Lau noticed something even more suspicious. Before starting his tests, Marcus entered the walk-in freezer and retrieved several boxes of frozen chicken. But instead of opening them immediately, he studied each label as if inspecting a piece of evidence. He photographed supplier tags, then pulled out a document from a private envelope, clearly not part of the restaurant's standard paperwork. After comparing it to each box, Marcus's expression darkened. His jaw tightened in silence. He jotted something down in a red notebook he kept locked in his backpack, as if it were a treasured secret. Lau could feel it now. This went deeper than food quality. Was it a conspiracy? A chain of violations? a truth buried beneath layers of silence. The next morning, still posing as Gavin the blogger, Leo chose a seat near a group of employees on break. With a casual tone, he made conversation. "That Marcus guy seems seriously committed," he said. "Does he ever stay late? Seems like someone who really loves his work." The seemingly innocent question made the group exchange glances, followed by quiet laughter. "He's intense, for sure," a young cashier giggled. "But nobody stays after close except the manager." "Yeah," added a server. "He's got 2 little ones at home, always rushes back to read bedtime stories. No way he's hanging around here late." Lau's heart sank. This wasn't just about secret experiments. Marcus was sacrificing something sacred, precious time with his children, for a mission Lau still didn't understand. This wasn't loyalty to a company. This was conscience, or maybe something far more urgent. That evening, Lau decided to break the silence. He arrived early and set up at a table near the prep counter, pretending to be deep into blogging work. When Marcus stepped out from the kitchen for a break, Lau stood up and accidentally knocked over a glass of water. "Sorry about that," he exclaimed, jumping to clean the mess. A perfect excuse to initiate contact with the man who had haunted his thoughts all week. Marcus bent down to help, his face polite but distant. Lau looked at him, flooded with questions, not about chicken, but about the courage and loneliness of someone quietly fighting a battle no one else seemed to see. As Marcus gathered the fallen papers, his calloused hands moved with the care of a master craftsman who treated every piece of work with reverence. "No harm done," Marcus said, offering a tired smile. Up close, Lau could see the deep shadows under his eyes, the unmistakable marks of sleepless nights. His hands were covered in burns and scrapes, scars from a lifetime in the kitchen. Some still looked fresh, red and raw, painful to even glance at. "You seem to spend a lot of time here," Lau said softly, keeping the inquisitive tone of a food blogger. "You must really love this place." Marcus paused. In his eyes, something flickered. Maybe suspicion, maybe fatigue hardened into habit. "It's just a job," he replied, but the tightness around his eyes and the way his fingers subtly clenched told another story. Lau leaned in, lowering his voice. "Something's changed with the food lately, hasn't it? Doesn't taste like it used to." Marcus's entire body seemed to contract, his shoulders stiffened, eyes darting toward the manager's office before turning back to Lau. "And everything changes," he said, his tone flat, and not always for the better. Before Lau could press further, Marcus was called back into the kitchen. As he walked away, a small slip of paper fell from his pocket. Lau picked it up and froze. It wasn't a receipt. It was a food testing request form, stamped by a local food safety lab. In that moment, the puzzle Lau had been building in his mind shattered and reassembled itself in a far more disturbing way. A chef conducting midnight experiments was already unusual, but secretly sending product samples for lab testing? That was something else entirely. A red flag, a warning, a threat that might go beyond product quality and into public safety. The next morning, Lau arrived at Branch 37 earlier than usual and was greeted by flashing red lights from emergency vehicles outside the restaurant. Inside, staff huddled in small groups, faces etched with confusion and fear. Manager Stevens was in a heated argument with a technician near the kitchen. "What's going on?" Lau asked a trembling cashier. "The walk-in freezer failed last night," she whispered. "Thousands of dollars in inventory might be lost. The backup generator kicked in, but it's starting to overload." Lau maintained his guise as an outside observer, but inside, the CEO in him was calculating not just the loss in product, but the far greater cost, the erosion of customer trust, something he knew from experience was nearly impossible to win back once broken. At that moment, Marcus burst through the front doors, half an hour early for his shift. "What's the status?" he asked, ignoring ranks, protocols, and formalities. Compressors shot, temperatures climbing fast. Stevens replied flatly. "We've got less than an hour before everything hits the danger zone." Marcus didn't hesitate. The exhaustion in his body vanished, replaced by sharp, commanding energy. "Move the stock to the auxiliary coolers. Now, call the other branches. Ask who's got extra space. Everyone, let's go. Priority, chicken first, then dairy, then produce." "But company protocol says—" The technician started to object. "Company protocol isn't going to save this shipment," Marcus snapped, not slowing down. "You in or out?" For a few seconds, Lau stood frozen. Then, caught in the urgency of the moment, he joined the human chain, moving boxes of meat to the refrigerated truck. While working, he watched Marcus inspect each case of chicken, with the same focus he had shown during those clandestine midnight experiments. "This batch should have been rejected at delivery," Marcus muttered to himself. "Look at this packaging. It's been tampered with." "How can you tell?" Lau asked reflexively, momentarily forgetting his cover. Marcus turned, his eyes razor-sharp. "Seal's been re-glued, date stamp, slightly off-center. Classic forgery. I've had a bad feeling about this for a while now." The name Marcus muttered next sent a chill down Lau's spine. Derek Henderson. The same man recently promoted to oversee 3 states. Precisely where all the mysteriously underperforming branches were located. As the crisis stabilized and the staff dispersed to clean up, Marcus disappeared into a narrow hallway leading toward the receiving area, usually off-limits to anyone but management or delivery personnel. 20 minutes later, he returned, face composed, but hands trembling slightly as he slipped a key into his pocket. A cold current ran down Lau's spine. While everyone else was distracted, he quietly followed the path Marcus had just taken. Unlike the polished front of house, this hallway revealed the building's true age. Rusting pipes, peeling paint, and layers of dust from years of service. At the end was the loading dock door, but what caught Lau's attention was a smaller door off to the side, labeled faintly, Storage B. The door was unlocked, a serious security violation. Inside, flickering fluorescent lights illuminated disorganized shelves filled with old promotional flyers, cleaning chemicals, and outdated training manuals. But in the corner stood a moss-green filing cabinet, the top drawer secured with a brand-new padlock. Lau stood still. As CEO, he had every right to open any company property, but as Gavin, the food blogger, he had none. If caught trying to unlock this drawer, the cover he had meticulously maintained would shatter in an instant. And yet, the look in Marcus's eyes when he mentioned Henderson, the quiet fear etched into every action, pushed Lau to take one more step. An alarm bell rang in his mind, one that had nothing to do with equipment. He reached into his worn leather wallet and pulled out 2 slim metal tools, souvenirs from his days in the lock-picking club back at Wilder University. A party trick in his college days, now the key to unlocking something no one wanted to find. Within minutes, the lock clicked open with a dry but satisfying snap. Inside was a different world. Cold, calculated, and meticulously organized, like the evidence room of a criminal investigation. Original invoices were clipped beside altered versions. Photos of authentic supplier labels were displayed next to counterfeit copies. Delivery temperature logs revealed dangerous deviations from food safety standards. Chicken packaging, real and substituted, lay side by side. The difference is subtle but unmistakable. And then came the delivery receipts. Each one bore the signature of Derek Henderson, the recently promoted regional supervisor overseeing the very districts now in crisis. Every signature felt like a knife in Lau's gut, cutting deep into the trust he had once placed in his own system. Page after page told the same story. Premium chicken swapped for cheaper cuts, organic produce replaced with conventional stock, fresh ingredients substituted with previously frozen items that had been thawed and refrozen multiple times. At the bottom, Lau found the lab reports, The exact same kind of document he had seen fall from Marcus's pocket. One line stood out, circled in red ink. Sample shows signs of being frozen and thawed twice. Significant cellular degradation. Not recommended for commercial food preparation. Lau's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone and began photographing every document in the drawer. But at the very bottom, something stopped his breath. A black leather notebook. Inside, Marcus had documented a meticulous timeline. Each ingredient change, every customer complaint, phone calls, internal reports. The margins were filled with quiet, damning notes. Report sent to Henderson. No action. Escalated to regional. Redirected back to Henderson. Hotline called. Case ID issued. Closed the next day with the note, resolved. One red underlined entry on the final page read, Jenny was terminated after raising the issue with corporate. This wasn't just about cost cutting. This was systematic sabotage. A calculated effort to undermine Branch 37 and suppress any attempt to fix it. Someone had decided this location had to fail. The sound of footsteps snapped Lau out of his thoughts. He hurriedly returned the documents, locked the cabinet, and slipped out just as two employees carrying mop buckets turned the corner. That night, in the damp silence of his motel room, the rain hammering the roof echoed his unrest. The puzzle pieces began to connect. Marcus hadn't broken any rules. He'd been building a legal case. Every midnight experiment, each discarded batch of chicken, wasn't about new recipes. It was scientific evidence, showing the deterioration caused by ingredient substitution. But Lau still didn't understand. Why hadn't Marcus sent this evidence to someone higher up? Why hadn't he blown the lid off Henderson's control? Maybe the answer ran deeper. Something personal. Or perhaps the conspiracy was larger than either of them had imagined. The next night, a storm rolled into Lakeville. Wind screamed through empty parking lots. Rain lashed the windows of Branch 37. Lau sat alone in his usual corner, coffee gone cold, mind spinning like the storm outside. As the restaurant prepared to close, Lau stood up. His decision was made. Marcus had just locked the kitchen door when Lau approached him. Out in the cold, empty parking lot. "We need to talk," Lau said, dropping his blogger act. He raised his phone, revealing the photographs. "About what you've been doing at 4 a.m. and about Henderson." Marcus turned pale. For a moment, Lau feared he'd bolt, or worse, lash out. But instead, Marcus just stood there, shoulders shaking, then slumping. As if a burden he'd carried for months had finally been dropped. "Get in the car," Marcus said quietly. They sat in his battered Toyota, the windows fogged from warm breath and freezing rain. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale with tension. "How long have you known?" Marcus asked, eyes fixed forward. "I saw you 3 nights ago." Lau answered honestly. "I followed you. I saw you in the kitchen. I saw the file cabinet." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, weighing whether to feel relieved or defeated. "You're corporate, aren't you? Sent to fire me?" No, Lau said slowly. "I'm here to understand. Why the secrecy? Why document everything but never report it? What you have could take down Henderson's whole region." A short, bitter laugh escaped Marcus. "You think I haven't tried?" He unlocked his phone and swiped through dozens of messages. 6 formal complaints to regional HQ, 2 calls to the ethics hotline, multiple internal reports. All ignored, closed, or rerouted to one name: Henderson. "I even filed a preliminary report directly to VP Wallace," Marcus said, voice flat, like reading a list of disappointments. "You want to see the response?" He held up the screen. On it was an email from Derek Henderson. The text was cold, calculated. Any further unsubstantiated claims regarding supply quality will be treated as acts of corporate sabotage. You remember what happened to Jenny Castro. Best to stay quiet if you want to keep your job. Who's Jenny Castro? Lau asked, though he already suspected the truth. Marcus stared out the rain-blurred windshield. Our former manager. Best boss I've ever had. His hands gripped the wheel tighter. She was the first to notice the supply issues. 4 months ago. Documented everything. Followed protocol. 2 weeks later, she was fired for failing to meet performance targets. Her replacement came straight from Henderson's old district. His voice cracked. That's when I knew it was bigger than me. Lau hesitated before asking the next question. Why not quit? Find another job. Why risk this? Risk your family time to fight something the entire system seems determined to ignore. In the silence, rain drummed like a solemn rhythm. Marcus finally exhaled, his tone softening with memory. My father worked the assembly line at Phelan Motors for 37 years, he said. When they started cutting corners on safety components, he was the first to speak up. Filed reports, demanded investigation. Nobody listened. Marcus swallowed hard. Then a family of 4 died in a crash. Brakes failed. My dad testified in court. Lost everything. His pension, his reputation, his friends. He died believing he failed because he didn't fight hard enough early enough. Marcus turned to Lau, his eyes no longer weary but resolute. This isn't just about fried chicken, he said. It's about trust. A single mother scraping together enough for a special meal for her child. A 6-year-old boy thrilled to have his favorite dish. The staff here relying on every hour they work. He reached behind to the back seat and retrieved an old, worn employee handbook from Golden Bucket's early days. From its pages, Marcus pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a younger version of himself, nearly 2 decades ago, standing beside a kind, middle-aged woman. Both wore restaurant uniforms, their smiles genuine. Jenny gave me my first chance, Marcus spoke softly. I was 22, fresh out of prison. A mistake at 19 had closed every door, except hers. She taught me more than cooking. She taught me dignity. His voice hardened, like a blade being sharpened. Henderson thought that by forcing her out it would all end. But they were wrong. Lau leaned forward, his voice hoarse with emotion. Those late-night experiments. Why not just keep packaging evidence? Why go to such lengths? Marcus pressed his lips together before replying firmly. I needed irrefutable proof, controlled experiments to clearly demonstrate how the substitute ingredients degraded the food quality. No lawyer could dismiss it as coincidence. His eyes gleamed with the determination of a true fighter. I'm building a case that can't be buried, a truth packaged like scientific research, so when the company is forced to confront it, they can't evade it. No, you paid for the lab tests yourself. Lau asked quietly. Yes, Marcus nodded. I sent samples to an independent lab under a friend's name, to keep my identity hidden. Lau leaned back in his seat, his heart heavy. Before him sat an ordinary man, without title or authority, but carrying a resolve, discipline, and loyalty that perhaps even Golden Bucket's leadership lacked. So, what's your endgame? Lau asked, almost in a whisper. What do you plan to do with all this? The rain had finally ceased. Through the misted windshield, the Golden Bucket sign glowed, a symbol of both cherished memories and painful betrayals. Marcus stared at it for a long moment, as if seeking answers between 2 worlds, trust and treachery. I don't know yet, he admitted. I considered sending it to the local health inspector, but Henderson has connections there. I also thought about the press, but if they report without grasping the full scope, They'll focus on a single branch, leading to its closure. Exactly what they want. You think someone else is behind this, beyond Henderson? Lau inquired, his eyes fixed on the chef before him. Marcus exhaled, turning the key to start the engine, letting it hum softly. Henderson isn't smart enough to orchestrate something this complex. He's just following orders from higher up, someone with motives far beyond cost-cutting. As they parted ways in silence, Lau watched the old Toyota fade into the night. Marcus was unaware that the man he'd confided in wasn't just a casual blogger, but someone with the power to change the entire landscape. And strangely, Lau wasn't ready to reveal his true eye because something deeper was at play. A part of the very system he'd helped build was fracturing from within, and he needed to uncover the full truth before placing himself at the center. At Golden Bucket's headquarters, an unusual tension filled the air. Security personnel were stationed at main entrances, scrutinizing ID badges more rigorously than ever. Executive assistants whispered in glass corridors, their eyes filled with suspicion and fear, ahead of an emergency meeting with an undisclosed agenda. Inside the central conference room, its transparent walls offering no privacy, Lau Parker, no longer Gavin Mills, stood upright before a massive LED screen displaying a cascade of documents Marcus had painstakingly gathered over months. He'd returned to his signature suit, the emblem of his CEO status, but the dark circles under his eyes betrayed his exhaustion. The past week of undercover work had irrevocably changed him. All this evidence, he began, his voice steady yet cold, points to a systematic scheme to sabotage specific Golden Bucket branches. He highlighted images, substituted ingredients, counterfeit goods, ignored complaints, and whistleblowers systematically ousted. Sophia Chin, vice president of operations, the first to voice doubts, quickly scanned her tablet, then nodded in confirmation. All delivery records bear Henderson's verified signature, and the side-by-side comparisons of genuine and substituted goods are undeniably damning. Vince Harmon, who had previously advocated for the dismissal of the entire management team at Branch 37, shifted uncomfortably, his leg bouncing under the table. With all due respect, this evidence was collected by a lower-level chef without quality control certifications. Could he have misunderstood the supply chain processes? The samples had been validated by 2 independent laboratories. Lau responded without hesitation. He placed a hefty file on the table, thick, weighty, and indisputable. And Henderson's involvement is unequivocal. He turned to the legal advisor. I want a thorough review of all communications between Henderson and other senior leaders. Emails, messages, calls, covering the past 12 months. We've already initiated the process, the lawyer confirmed. Henderson's corporate accounts have also been suspended. It's time to question the motive, Lau stated, his gaze sweeping the room. Cost-cutting alone doesn't explain this. Why are only these branches affected, while others operate normally? A heavy silence settled over the room. Then Sophia spoke again, this time with noticeable hesitation. There's a commonality among the sabotaged branches, she said, projecting a map of locations onto the screen. They're all situated in commercial zones where property values have surged over the past 18 months. Each of these branches is company-owned, not leased. The map revealed an unexpected pattern. Every compromised branch, from Branch 37 in Lakeville to 5 other sites, was located on high-value real estate. Over the past year, the company had received numerous purchase offers. All declined. Lau narrowed his eyes. Follow the money trail. Exactly. Sophia nodded. If these branches fail, their closures can be justified. Then, the company can sell the properties and immediately cash in. But who stands to benefit? The chief financial officer interjected. Henderson doesn't have the authority to sell company assets. The question hung in the air like a sharp blade. A new boundary had been crossed. This was no longer about product quality, no longer accidental. This was financial manipulation, speculative scheming, and the mastermind could be seated in this very room. The final revelation didn't come from a seasoned executive or veteran lawyer, but from a young analyst quietly working in the corner, fingers flying over his keyboard. "Boss," she began, her voice trembling yet clear. "I found something in Henderson's email archive. A correspondence thread with Nexus Holdings, a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands." The room fell silent, as if holding its breath. She projected a document onto the large screen. A discreet authorization agreement promising Henderson a 2% commission on any Golden Bucket assets liquidated under his supervision. A wave of murmurs spread throughout the room until Lau raised his hand for silence. "Who is behind Nexus Holdings?" he asked, his voice cold as steel. The analyst hesitated. "The ownership structure is concealed through multiple layers of subsidiaries, but we've traced some of the transfers. One of them was deposited into a personal account under the name Vincent Harmon." All eyes turned to the regional director, his face pale, as if drained of blood. "Is there something you'd like to share with us, Vince?" Lowe inquired, his tone gentle yet chilling. Harmon's composed facade crumbled. "This wasn't supposed to go this far," he stammered. "We only intended to create a performance decline to justify closures, then buy back the land cheaply through Nexus. The food quality issue was Henderson's idea. I didn't—" "Save it for the investigation," Leo interrupted, nodding to the security team. As Harmon was escorted out of the conference room, Lau turned back to face the executive board, his gaze stern yet contemplative. "We have another issue," he stated. "An employee endeavored to protect this company's reputation and was nearly destroyed for it. This isn't just a systemic failure, it's a failure of leadership, including my own." While the legal team commenced coordination with authorities, Lau quietly exited the conference room. There was someone he needed to meet, not as a CEO, but as a fellow human being. At Branch 37, Marcus was engrossed in food preparation when the restaurant manager approached, stammering, "Someone wants to see you, in the office." Marcus wiped his hands and stepped into the small room that had once been his heaven for uncovering every scrap of paper, every ingredient packet, every piece of evidence. But today, standing there was a well-dressed man, observing the motivational poster on the wall with a faint smile. "What do you need?" Marcus asked, cautious. The man turned around. Something in his stance, his nod, made Marcus gasp in recognition. "You're Gavin Mills?" Marcus stepped back half a pace. "No. You're Lau Parker," he smiled, "CEO of Golden Bucket." Marcus stood frozen, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "So all this time, you were watching me?" "I observed," Lau said. "And I saw everything. The midnight experiments, the evidence files, your silence, and your fear. Are you here to fire me?" Marcus asked, his voice dry. "Quite the opposite." Lau gestured toward the chair. "I am here to thank you, and to apologize." In a conversation that lasted nearly an hour, Lau recounted everything that had transpired that morning, from Henderson's suspension and Harmon's arrest, to the discovery of Nexus Holdings' scheme and the mastermind behind the attempt to seize the company's 7 branches, all showing similar signs, Lau said. "And you were the only one who dared to stand up, while those entrusted with responsibility chose silence. So, what happens next?" Marcus asked, still in disbelief. "Henderson has been arrested. Harmon is cooperating with investigators to mitigate his sentence. Several senior executives are suspended pending accountability investigations. But," Lau paused, looking directly into Marcus's eyes, "more importantly, we need to make amends to people like you." He handed Marcus a folder. "This branch will temporarily close for inspection and renovation, but all employees will continue to receive full pay. When it reopens, I want you to take on a new role." Marcus opened the folder. Inside, in clear handwriting, it read, "Regional Director, Food Quality Assurance." "Leave me?" he asked earnestly. I'm just a chef with a criminal record. You're someone who dared to put conscience above personal gain, Lau said, and that's the kind of person we need to protect this company from future betrayals. 6 months later, outside the newly renovated Branch 37, a long line of eager customers waited. Above the familiar golden bucket sign was a new tagline: "Quality you can trust." Local news channels crowded to report. The story of the scandal and the journey to combat it had become a case study in business ethics classes at universities. Inside, Marcus Cain, now wearing the gold-trimmed suit of a regional director, stood silently, surveying the space he once feared would disappear forever. The large glass corner on the right was his own idea, a creative station where customers could witness staff developing and refining recipes. 2 minutes until the grand opening, Sophia Chin's voice rang out. Now, she was the executive vice president, having played a pivotal role in exposing the entire scheme. Marcus gathered the staff, familiar faces and newcomers alike, their eyes filled with respect and a hint of disbelief. "Many of you may not know," Marcus began. "Those nights I stayed late weren't just to expose those trying to destroy this place, but to discover something even more important: how to improve our processes." He pointed to the notebooks that were once confidential files, now displayed in a glass case under the title, "The 4 a.m. Revolution." "I found that by adjusting frying times by a few seconds, tweaking temperatures, and allowing the batter to rest, the quality of our food could surpass even our current standards." What Marcus didn't mention was the job offer from Lau Parker to work at the headquarters, which he had declined. He wanted to stay where he began, a place once wounded, now a symbol of something Golden Bucket had forgotten: trust. "We don't need another executive detached from reality," Lau had once told Marcus. "We need someone who understands the frontline experience, someone who remembers the smell of burnt frying oil at 4 a.m. when the world is still asleep." A young employee raised their hand, full of hope. "Is it true that each branch will have its own innovation station?" Marcus nodded. "Starting next quarter, all 2,000 branches will have dedicated spaces for staff to contribute ideas for quality improvement." He paused, his eyes scanning the now fully renovated dining area. "The Golden Standard program will empower every employee, regardless of rank, to submit innovations directly to regional management. No more barriers, no more layers of bureaucracy stifling innovation." He didn't elaborate on the broader reforms already underway: an enhanced anonymous quality control system with surprise third-party audits, a whistleblower protection policy ensuring all quality complaints reach executive desks, and a blockchain-integrated supply chain making ingredient tampering nearly impossible. Just before opening, Lau Parker arrived without entourage, without fanfare, a stark contrast to previous grand visits. His reputation had not only survived the scandal, but was bolstered by transparency and decisive action. "Nervios?" Lau asked, adjusting Marcus's name tag. "About the reopening, no? About living up to all this?" Marcus glanced around. From the revamped eatery to the eager crowd outside? "Yes, that's precisely why you're the right person for this role." Mao smiled. The reopening commenced with a speech that would later be cited in business ethics courses. "Golden Bucket has emerged from its darkest hour, not due to executive initiatives, not because of strategic consultants, but because of an employee with unwavering integrity." Marcus Cain reminded us that a company's greatest asset isn't real estate or secret recipes, but the character of those who wear its uniform daily. USS Department of the Treasury. As Marcus stepped forward to cut the ribbon, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Jenny Castro, the former manager, once unjustly dismissed, had been reinstated, received full back pay, and now beamed with pride. "This branch has always been special," Marcus began, setting aside his prepared remarks. "Not because of the building, not because of the brand, but because of the people who've sweated here to serve this community. Today isn't just a new beginning, It's a commitment to quality, to ethics, and to respect for everyone who walks through these doors, be they customers or staff. When the doors opened, applause erupted. Throughout the day, Marcus moved tirelessly among the tables, not merely observing but working alongside his team, as he'd always done. As the final customer approached the counter, Marcus personally handed over the first meal of the reopening. After the first bite, the customer grinned, even better than before. "Because now it's made with the right ingredients," Marcus replied, a relieved smile on his face, but his eyes remained as sharp as ever. "And with integrity, you can taste it." Late that night, after the crowd had dispersed and staff celebrated in the break room, Marcus returned alone to the kitchen. A familiar routine. He checked the clock. 3:55. Nearly a year since he'd begun those sleepless nights, quietly frying batches of chicken, recording temperatures, noting anomalies, in solitude, in fear, but also in hope. Now, those very methods had become company standards. What was once a dim kitchen for a man on the brink of unemployment was now a transparent, open lab, where ideas were valued and efforts recognized. As he prepared to leave, Lau Parker appeared at the doorway. "Old habits die hard?" Lau chuckled. "No, just reminiscing where it all began," Marcus replied, eyes on the gleaming fryers. "The question is, where do we go from here?" Lau placed a folder on the counter. "We've restored what was damaged, but that's not enough. What could Golden Bucket become if every branch had someone like you defending the dignity of this work?" Marcus pondered. "You won't find 2,000 people willing to work at 4 a.m. unnoticed." "True," Lau nodded. "But perhaps we can find 2,000 willing to stand up for quality, if they know they'll be protected, not silenced." He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, eyes earnest. "Regional training program. Designed by you, led by you. Teach others to do what you've done, without paying the price of isolation and sacrifice." Marcus took the folder, silent, but in his eyes was that familiar spark of a man once abandoned, now igniting change. Under the dawn sky, the Golden Bucket sign glowed softly, not just a hollow promise, but a steadfast commitment, all because a chef once refused to believe that integrity was negotiable.